The rain had a way of peeling back your pride. It soaked through every layer, your coat, your shoes, your memory. I stood on the corner of West Broughton Street, holding a takeout bag that reeked of melted cheese and guilt, waiting for the concierge to buzz me in. The same building that once bore my family's name above its entrance now didn't even register my presence. The marble lobby greeted me with indifference. Elevator mirrors caught my soaked reflection, hair clinging to my face, and clothes stuck to my skin. An older man stepped in beside me. Silence. Then, Duval's daughter, right? His voice wasn't cruel, just curious. That made it worse. I didn't answer. Just handed over the order, signed the receipt, and dropped the slip. It fell slow, twirling into a puddle on the floor. In the smear of wet ink, I saw his face, my father's, staring up at me. Thunder cracked outside, and in that instant, I felt 17 again, sitting at our family table, being told, legacy matters more than love. As I stepped out into the storm, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I picked up, expecting static. A voice whispered one word, Ginevra. Then silence. The kind that presses on your chest long after the call ends. We used to own this city. Citron was our crown jewel, 7 restaurants across 3 states, each with its own style but the same soul. I was on magazine covers, called the Duchess of Dining. Cameras followed my moves, chefs followed my lead. And my family? They followed the money. But now? I walked alleyways, dodged puddles, and prayed the food stayed warm. The glitz of interviews had faded into a dull ache in my gut. Fame wasn't a memory. It was a ghost. A mocking one. My father called it discipline. My mother called it survival. I called it betrayal. Especially when they let me burn alone. A man passed me on the sidewalk, chef whites under a trench coat. We'd graduated together from culinary school. He looked at me, hesitated, then picked up his pace like I was contagious. I didn't blame him. My stomach growled loud enough to earn a glance from a teen walking by. I hadn't eaten since yesterday, but I kept moving. Inside the corner bodega, I wrung out my sleeves near the chip aisle. The clerk gave me the look, wary, like I might steal something or collapse. I was too tired to do either. I caught sight of myself in the glass door of the fridge and froze. Not because I looked bad, but because I didn't look like me. I looked like her, my mother, when she left. Hollow eyes. Lips set to survive. You don't leave the Everharts. You are cast out, I remembered someone saying once. I thought they were joking. They weren't. I remembered Brenner's smirk when Magnus told him I'd been removed from the family trust. They didn't cry or argue. They just erased me. In the Foundation's boardroom, where portraits lined the wall, mine had been taken down. Later, someone told me they found it in the trash. I didn't go looking. I climbed 3 flights to my apartment, calling it tiny was generous. The ceiling leaked in 2 places, and the radiator coughed more than it warmed. But it was mine. Or at least rented in my name. The phone rang again. Same voice. This time, it said, if you're still carrying your mother's blood, you need to know something. I held the phone. Didn't answer. My hand shook, not with fear, but recognition. From the top drawer, I pulled out a letter. The envelope was yellowed, creased, the name on it, mine, written in my mother's handwriting. I had never opened it. My thumb slipped under the seal. The paper crackled like old leaves. The first line, Calla, if you're seeing this, it means the truth was buried too deep. Her voice echoed in my head. Not soft. Not broken. Clear. Urgent. The third night in a row, a black sedan parked across from my building. No one got in. No one got out. I tried to ignore it until I got a new order on the app. The name on it? Ginevra L. I nearly dropped my phone. The order? 1 grilled cheese. The tip? $1,000. The delivery address? Our old house. My breath caught. The walk there felt like hours. Every street lamp hummed a memory. Every window looked like someone was watching. At the gate, I stood frozen. The porch light flicked on. Then off. I didn't knock. I couldn't. I turned to leave. My phone buzzed again. A message lit up the screen. Truth isn't buried. It's just waiting. I looked up, the rain sharp against my skin. I whispered, "What did you hide from me, Mother?" In the puddle beneath me, I saw my reflection. But this time, it wasn't just mine. Her face, Ginevra's, stared back at me. 10 years ago, the spotlight didn't burn, it shimmered. I stood on a stage in Charleston, my name echoing through the auditorium. Chef of the South, the MC declared. Cameras flashed. Applause swelled. Brenner stood at my side, offering his signature half-smile. Sylvia, flawless in a pearl-colored dress, clapped like it meant something. But her eyes calculated. I held the trophy in one hand, the mic in the other. To Ginevra, I said, letting the name hang in the air like a challenge. I watched my father's jaw tighten in the front row. He never believed in sentiment, only lineage. Back at Citron, Sylvia raised a flute of champagne. To Calla, she said. To empire builders. The staff buzzed with energy. But Magnus, seated in the corner with his scotch, never clapped. He stared through the glass wall, expression unreadable. Sylvia leaned in during the toast. You've made quite the empire, she said. Just don't forget who raised you. Her voice was velvet and venom. I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. 2 nights later, just past dinner rush, a health inspector arrived unannounced. Dimitri, my head chef, looked like he'd seen a ghost. Everything clean? I asked. He nodded too quickly. I'll handle it, Sylvia said, already tying on an apron. Let me serve him personally. It struck me as odd, she wasn't staff. But I let it slide. She was family. The inspector sat at table 7, ordered the sea bass. I watched from across the room, unease growing in my stomach like mold on fruit. Then came the collapse. Mid-bite, he slumped forward, convulsing. Chaos erupted. Dimitri shouted. Staff screamed. I ran to his side, calling 911 with trembling hands. Sirens. Red and blue light bathed the dining room. I stood soaked in sweat, wiping my hands on my apron. I heard someone say, "He's not breathing." News vans parked outside before the plates were cleared. Food poisoning at Citron, investigation opened. My phone didn't stop buzzing. The next morning, I sat at the boardroom table of the Everhart Foundation. Everyone was there, Brenner, Magnus, Sylvia, even Nina, quiet as a mouse. No one would meet my eyes. Magnus didn't look up from the sheet in his hand. Effective immediately, Calla Everhart is suspended pending internal investigation. Suspended? My voice cracked. I didn't even cook the dish. Sylvia dabbed a tear that wasn't real. Sometimes, love means protecting the bigger picture. I looked to Nina, but she only stared at the table, twisting her necklace around her fingers. I placed my chef's knife, my father's once, on the mahogany. It landed with a thud that echoed longer than it should have. Then I walked out. The elevator closed like the end of a chapter one never wanted to write. By nightfall, every news outlet carried my face under the headline, "Contaminated Chef?" Online forums roasted me alive. How can a 5-star chef miss something so dangerous? Guess money doesn't buy hygiene. Brenner released a statement, "The Everhart family holds integrity above all, even when it's painful." I watched it play on the tiny TV in my kitchen, half my things in boxes. An eviction notice curled on the fridge door like a dying leaf. One line from the anchor hit hardest, "Her silence only confirms her guilt." I wanted to scream. But who'd listen? I reached out to a reporter. He ghosted me. I applied to a small bistro downtown. They didn't call back. Word spread fast in our world. I was toxic now. The flash drive came in a plain envelope, no return address. I almost tossed it. Inside? A single file. CCTV footage from Citron's kitchen. Sylvia standing over the sauce, slipping something from her purse. Dimitri nodding as she stirred. I drove straight to Brenner's estate. He didn't flinch when I showed him. "We gave you the spotlight," he said, eyes like steel. "Now it's ours." I staggered out, heart pounding. I drove to Father's estate. But the butler met me at the gate. "Mr. Everhart is in Lisbon. Indefinitely." No answers. Just doors. Just silence. And suddenly, everything made sense. It was never about me cooking well. It was about me being controllable. Behind the alley of Citron, I lit a match. My chef's whites crumpled in a pile, sleeves stained from years of grease and dreams. The fire caught quickly. The fabric hissed. "This is not surrender," I whispered. "This is rebirth." Ashes floated like snowflakes. One landed on my wrist. It didn't burn. Not anymore. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't trust anyone. They're watching. 3 years passed like smoke through cracks, seen, then gone. I drove through Savannah with a cracked window and a car that groaned at every light. The city hadn't changed much. But I had. I was Calla Everhart, the ghost of a name they buried. I wore a hat low and kept my mouth lower. Rain painted the streets, turning every light into a smudge of memory. The stoplight at River and King turned red, and I saw it, Citron, now rebranded Hartley Estate Dining. My brother's name, not mine. My mother's food, but not her story. Side door drop-off, downtown, a voice crackled through my headset. Another faceless dispatcher. Another drop. They didn't know who I was. Maybe that was the point. I smiled faintly. They made me invisible. Now I move unseen. Have you ever felt invisible in a place you once belonged? The side door creaked open at what used to be my kingdom. I left a bag with 2 Reubens and a handwritten receipt. The maitre d', a kid who once asked for my autograph, looked up, froze, then turned his back. I stood there a moment too long. Outside, rain slipped under my collar. I reached for the ignition and saw it, an envelope on my passenger seat, dry despite the weather. My heart paused. Inside, a golden key. A card. Elias Monroe, attorney at law. I didn't know the name, But the handwriting on the back of the card? That I knew. Ginevra's. I closed my eyes. Her voice returned, soft as smoke. Sometimes truth doesn't knock. It slips through cracks. I remembered the little notebook she once tucked into my purse. Pages smelled like her perfume, notes scribbled like prayers. I opened it again. A line stood out now, underlined twice. Not all deaths show up on paper. Maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I was still building. Would you turn the lock on a forgotten past or leave it sealed forever? I texted Elias. I'm in. Where? Ping. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. I booked a motel off Oglethorpe. The room smelled of lemon cleaner and memory. I stared at the key on the table, golden and heavier than it looked. I reread the notebook until dawn. At 10 sharp, I entered the cafe Elias had chosen, neutral, public, safe. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s. Clean-shaven. Sharp eyes. Ms. Everhart, he said, sliding a drive across the table like it was laced with poison. Calla, I said. Your mother set this in motion before she disappeared. She suspected discrepancies in the family's foundation. I plugged in the drive on my old tablet. My breath hitched. Bank transfers. Shell companies. Funds meant for food banks rerouted to consulting firms linked to Sylvia Hartley. Anne Brenner. Sylvia's voice echoed, "You'll stay silent or you'll burn." I looked up. Then I'll burn brighter. The rain thickened. We parted with no handshake. The parking garage was darker than I remembered. I stopped midway to my car. A black sedan idled in the corner, engine quiet, windows fogged. I climbed into my car and locked the doors. The rearview mirror showed nothing, no movement, no driver. Still, I didn't breathe easy. My phone buzzed. No caller ID. Message, "We see you. Sit down." I didn't. I drove. At a red light, I pulled over, heart pounding in my ears. The rain hit harder. I stared into the dark and whispered, "They're afraid of me." Ginevra appeared in memory, gluing the handle back on a broken teacup. Sometimes you need to lose everything to learn what you're worth. I typed a message to Sadie Kent, a reporter who once covered food, but now dabbled in something deeper. I have something. Meet me. When did you realize silence cost more than the truth? By nightfall, I stood at the wrought iron gate of the old Everhart estate. The gold key trembled in my palm. I stepped through the door that hadn't opened in years. A voice behind me said, "You're not leaving till you know the truth." I didn't turn around. The storm outside matched the one inside me. The lobby of Monroe and Hale was built to intimidate, white marble walls that echoed every step, lights so sterile they felt judgmental. I moved through the metal detector like a ghost passing through glass. No one stopped me. No one greeted me. And yet, they all saw me. Elias Monroe waited at the far end, hands folded, a sealed folder under one arm. "You look just like your mother did," he said softly, "the day she walked out of this building." He led me into a glass-walled office where everything smelled of polish and power. No coffee, no photos. Just law. He slid the folder toward me. The Lock Trust, it read in gold ink. Inside, coded bank statements, scanned letters, and a single photo, Rome, 1993. My mother and Elias smiling, unaware the shutter had caught them mid-laugh. "Why now?" I asked. My voice didn't tremble, but my fingers did. Because silence was never her choice, he said. It was forced. Would you trust a man who says he knew your mother better than your father did? Back in the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed with her old notebook on my lap. It had always looked like recipes, handwritten in her slanted loops. But now I saw it, a code. The first letters of each ingredient, across a week's worth of entries, spelled out names. Shell corporations. Tied to Everhart assets. All routed through offshore accounts. And then, there it was. The Liberation account. Value, $93 million. Not inheritance. Evidence. I stared at my mother's writing. Food tells the truth if you know how to taste it. She said that once while stirring risotto. I thought she meant flavor. She meant survival. I copied everything into my phone. My hands trembled so badly I had to steady them with a coffee cup. A door had opened. I had to choose whether to step through it. Outside, the rain returned. A black SUV idled across the lot. Its headlights flicked on when I exited the room. At the red light, I slammed the brakes. The SUV stopped a few car lengths behind. I reached for my phone. Elias, don't go home. They're watching. At the same moment, a text from an unknown number, we warned you once. I didn't respond. I took the first left toward the edge of the city. Then I saw her. Sylvia. Driving the SUV. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, cold and unreadable. If they want war, I muttered, I'll serve it hot. What would you do if the people who ruined you came chasing again? I found Elias in a side cafe near the courthouse. No security, just strong coffee and distrust. I slammed the folder on the table. You knew they stole from the foundation. Why give this to me? He sighed. Because your mother asked me to. I waited. She loved me once, he said. But she stayed with Magnus for you. My heart twisted, but I didn't flinch. She said you'd see the truth only when you'd lost everything. That's when you'd be ready. She was wrong, I said. I'm not ready. I'm inevitable. He smiled like he'd been waiting to hear that. I left him there with his silence. Outside Atlanta, I found Maureen Hale, Ginevra's old housekeeper, now brittle and gray in a nursing home that smelled of bleach and endings. She recognized me without words. She said you'd come, Maureen whispered. Your mother knew too much. The brakes, they weren't faulty. They were cut. My knees nearly gave out. Jasper Clive, she added. He's the name on the trust. I swallowed hard. Is he family? No. He's worse. He's the one who buried the rest of the truth. She held my hand like it was made of glass. Your mother left one more recipe. She said you'd know what to do with it. I left with that sentence burning in my mind. The tears came later. I didn't wipe them away. Have you ever uncovered a truth so dark you wished you'd stayed ignorant? The drive back to Savannah was long and stormlit. My radio crackled. Switched channels. Then, a voice, distorted, mechanical, cut through. Ginevra's daughter is awake. I didn't scream. I gripped the wheel and whispered, then they'd better not sleep. In my rear view, the SUV appeared again. Like it never left. I sat in the car outside the Savannah Current newsroom, watching Sadie through the rain-speckled windshield as her live segment aired. The headline scroll screamed, Everhart Foundation Scandal, $93 million missing. Her voice, calm and deliberate, carried through the radio. Inside, Maureen Hale's recorded interview played. They stole from the people who trusted them. From children, hospitals, seniors. I saw it with my own eyes. I clenched the steering wheel so tight my knuckles cracked. They used my name. They used me. Sadie's segment ended. Viewer comments flooded the screen. Some in shock, some already in outrage. I exhaled a long breath, stepped out of the car, and felt the eyes of truth turning back on the Everharts. When the truth goes public, are you ready for the fallout? By the time I reached the courthouse steps, the media frenzy was a cyclone. Flashes popped like fireworks. Reporters yelled questions that blurred together into noise. 2 black SUVs pulled up. Brenner Everhart stepped out in cuffs, flanked by federal agents. His face was stone. Beside him, Jasper Clive, equally restrained, scanned the crowd with predator eyes. And then Sylvia. Hood pulled low, she screamed, "You have no proof," as cameras caught her face contorted in rage. Inside the courtroom, the footage played. Sylvia and Jasper caught on security tape, sneaking into the foundation server room. Files copied, money funneled. The prosecutor's voice was sharp. This is not mismanagement. This is theft. I watched from the glass-walled gallery. Heart pounding. Pulse in my throat. Behind me, Magnus stood pale, unmoving. The empire he built was disintegrating like ash in rain. I whispered, "This is for you, Mother." Later, a private chamber was cleared. Just me and Magnus. You knew, I said. You chose the legacy over your blood. He sat, smaller than I remembered, a man shrunk by his own lies. I thought I was protecting the brand. You lost your daughter. I lost everything. I stood. A brand that kills its own is a corpse. His hands shook. Calla. You buried Mom. You buried the truth. Now you bury the name. He sobbed quietly, not for her, but for the myth of himself. Has someone you trusted betrayed you for what they thought was right? I didn't say goodbye. Back in the small office we turned into the first site of the Ginevra project, I opened my laptop. Drafted steps for the restitution fund. Wrote the names of the first schools to rebuild, the clinics to refund. The places they'd robbed. Courage doesn't roar, my mother once said. It whispers, then acts. A knock at the door. Nina. She hovered like a ghost just outside the threshold. I'm sorry, Calla. I should have spoken up. I froze. I didn't offer comfort. Just clarity. You can help now, or stay silent again. Your choice. She nodded. I handed her a folder. Not as family. As a partner. The porch light at the old Everhart mansion flickered as I watched from my car. The nameplate was being removed. A new one screwed in, the Ginevra project. Rain tapped the windshield. I smiled. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Just real. My phone lit up. Notification, media blackout lifted. Live revelation at 8 p.m. I opened the note I'd written earlier. They think this is the end. They're about to see the beginning. The morning air carried the scent of turned earth and hope. Calla Everhart stepped into the garden behind what was once the Everhart mansion. Now, the Ginevra project stood in its place, rebuilt, reclaimed. Rows of young herbs and vegetables stretched out, each leaf heavy with dew from last night's rain. Sunlight glinted off the new greenhouse windows and the quiet murmurs of arriving workers floated through the air. She paused beneath a tall archway where a banner read, "From silence to service." She ran her fingers over a basil leaf and closed her eyes. Vanilla and sage, that warm, safe smell of her mother's kitchen filled her memory. The sound of Ginevra humming while chopping onions played like a long-lost melody in her chest. Her first group of hires gathered nearby, a former line cook from Citron, a prep chef once fired for age, and an elderly woman named Ruth who used to run a soul food kitchen in the South Side, shut down 10 years ago for code violations. Calla smiled. Let's start again. Have you ever rebuilt your life from ground zero? How did you find the spark to plant your first seed? At noon, Calla stood under a blooming magnolia tree. Dozens gathered, staff, community members, journalists. She held a note card but didn't read from it. My mother taught me that food heals more than hunger, it heals memory, she said, voice steady. This garden is for her, and for everyone who lost something they thought they'd never get back. She pulled a cloth from a bronze plaque, in memory of Ginevra Locke, 1936 to 2019. A screen nearby flickered to life, displaying black and white photos of Ginevra, cooking, smiling, holding Calla as a baby. The images faded into graphics showing donation totals, impact statistics, and the names of those helped by the recovered foundation funds. Brenner and Sylvia were nowhere to be seen. Nina and Magnus sent a note, "We're watching you." Proud. Calla tucked the card into her pocket. They might be watching, but she wasn't performing anymore. She was leading. The community kitchen buzzed with life. Inside, a group of older adults, laid off during the pandemic, forgotten by the workforce, stood in aprons, peeling carrots and laughing like old friends. Calla demonstrated a simple stew recipe. "This is Everlight stew," she said. "Made from scraps. Like us, it simmers into something strong and warm." One participant wiped her eyes. "I thought my kitchen burned down. Now I've rebuilt one." A local reporter asked, "Do you feel like you've gotten your old life back?" Calla answered without hesitation. "It's not about getting your old life back, it's about building one that honors what you lost." Have you ever taken what broke you and built what saved others? As the sun dipped, Calla returned to her office. A letter sat on her desk, plain and unmarked. Inside, Sylvia's handwriting. "I couldn't see you then. I can't see you now. I'm sorry." Calla didn't cry. She folded the letter and slid it into a wooden box labeled Healing Archive. Nina appeared in the doorway. "Your mother's recipe for forgiveness, maybe I need it too." Calla leaned back in her chair. "We don't serve forgiveness on a plate. We serve freedom." Night fell gently. Calla stood on the veranda, watching city lights blink to life. She scrolled through plans for a second Ginevra project in Atlanta, then a rural outreach to Georgia farming communities. She recalled her father's bitter words, "Legacy is built by those you forget." She whispered, "I'm building one by those you dismissed." A volunteer handed her a small leather ledger. Inside, the first donation to the Displaced Chefs Fund. What legacy will you leave, one people remember because you reminded them, or one they carry because you gave them wings? A breeze stirred the blossoms in the garden. Calla closed her eyes. She could almost hear Ginevra whisper, "You chose the light." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message, "The world is watching you now. Are you ready to lead it?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She set the phone down and looked out over the garden, magnolia blossoms glowing under the moon.